Because what happens is as you get closer to those goals, those voices, right? And they're not like psychotic voices, right? They're voices inside your head. It's family in the head. And it starts to really get louder and louder and louder. And it pulls you back to that point of safety, that sense of comfortability. Now, comfort doesn't mean good. Comfort means it's what you're used to. Got to be aware of that. We have to stop the self-destruction. And by the end of this video, you're going to know the steps to sabotage your self-sabotage. How can you break up that tendency to self-destruct yourself and get in the way of you achieving your goals? How can we do that? That we can move you forward so that you can achieve your goals? Well, stay with me and let's find out. Here we go. So first, what we got to talk about is what are some of those things that add to self-sabotage? It's absolutely called your internal critic. It's this sense of negative self-talk that you say to yourself, and it's about value and your self-value and moving forward. Now, what happens is a lot of individuals that throughout their life, they internalize this sense of value. How much are you allowed to achieve? And when we look at that, and I do this with my clients quite often, it's that we go back and we look at some of those old patterns. All of us have internalized patterns that we play out consciously and unconsciously too. So as we develop this internalized critic, or as I call it in my other videos, family in the head, it's this chorus in our brain that tells us, do this, do that. Oh, you can't trust them. Oh yeah, trust that person. Or you deserve this. And what happens is that when we're moving towards success, that's where that critic comes in. That's where that family in the head starts to manipulate you, starts to make you feel safer engaging in self-sabotage and self-destruction. And a lot of people do it. And the first thing we have to do is you have to recognize that family in the head. What does it say to you that manipulates your behavior, that drives you to engage in maladaptive beliefs, behaviors, and patterns that add to self-sabotage and self-destruction? So what I want you to do is I want you to get out a piece of paper and I want you to write down what that family in the head, that internalized critic, that negative self-talk says to you, because we got to catch it first. If we don't catch it, then it stays in control. What we want to do is put you in control. And that's the very first step. Now, what happens over time, if we don't bring recognition to it, if we don't shine light on it, what happens is that internalized critic, that family in the head, it just derides you, makes you feel small, makes you feel full of self-doubt and uncertainty, where you're questioning your own value, you're questioning your own choices, and you can end up in relationships that are very dangerous, very traumatic, very unhealthy. You could pick partners that fit those old patterns, right, from the past, those unhealthy people, and now why are you in the same relationship over and over again? Or when you try to do things differently and you're moving closer to your goals, you revert back to those old beliefs, behaviors, and patterns. So that's that self-talk. Also, what happens is that over time, once that family in the head, it really gets control, then we see, and I see this with a lot of my clients too, we start to see a lot of anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, intensive self-doubt, and that's the impact on your mental health. And it becomes this family in the head, these old patterns that you're playing out, that's self-destructive. And what happens is that anxiety, that depression makes it harder for you to achieve your goals. It makes it more complicated, because what happens is as you get closer to those goals, those voices, right? And they're not like psychotic voices, right? They're voices inside your head. It's family in the head. And it starts to really get louder and louder and louder. And it pulls you back to that point of safety, that sense of comfortability. Now, comfort doesn't mean good. Comfort means it's what you're used to. Got to be aware of that. And when we talk about anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, low self-worth, absolutely, that sense of self-sabotage gives you that sense of validation for who you are and what you deserve. And that's why a lot of people end up with this cycle, this negative cycle of self-sabotage, of self-destruction. But catching it, first step, recognizing it's connection to your mental health. Now, what we got to do is we got to start pushing back on it. We got to combat it. We've got to catch it. And what we want to do is we want to focus our attention on our goal and recognize that sometimes our sense of worth is attached to achieving our goals. And the best way to do that is not to aim at like giant goals, right? Not, going to the Wharton School of Business or something like that. But what it is, it's smaller goals. What are smaller goals that you can achieve? And the more that you become comfortable with that, the less intensive that family in the head is as you get closer to your goals. You have to recondition yourself to recognize that you have the worth, you have the value to achieve your goals, and you absolutely do. What makes you any different that you're not allowed to achieve your goals, that you're not allowed or able to do the things you need to do? You got to get out of your own way, and combating that is an intensive way to do that. And having compassion and patience with yourself is so important. It is so critical to this process that a lot of times we always sort of see ourselves as one less or in a less than situation. And sometimes we feel this sense of brokenness, this sense of low self-worth, low value. And that kind of gives us a sense of validation when we self-sabotage. But we're not doing that anymore because we're going to catch it. We're going to see it differently. We're going to change that perspective. And in doing that, we're going to build up this sense of self-compassion, recognize that you are able to achieve and do things differently. And it's about restructuring those things that you say to yourself. So on that same piece of paper that has all that family in the head, inner critic, all those statements and stuff, I want you to say, this is my short-term goal. It can be anything. It could be not drinking alcohol for a week or doing this, doing that. I don't know. But come up with whatever you want your goal to be. Then I want you to think, okay, what are my steps to achieve it? And that can be really hard. And that's why a mental health provider can be a lot of help, because we can help you break it down. We can help you recognize the steps to get there. Because, think about any staircase, right? You can't get to the top of the staircase just by saying, well, yeah, I want to get up there. Yep, I want to be at the top of the staircase. Well, you can't do that. You have to go each step, right? And most staircases, if they're big enough and long enough, you can't jump up there either, unless you're like a super jumper. But if you're not a super jumper, then you've got to do what the rest of us have to do. You got to take your steps to get there. And part of that is just being compassionate with yourself. And success is not a linear process, not by any means. It is not, yep, I'm going to start and finish with no sense of regression. All of us hit regressions. All of us slide backwards. Man, it totally happens. It happens to all of us. And we have to understand that this is part of the process. And what do we learn from it? Sliding backwards is one of the best teachers. It sucks, without a doubt. But it is a great teacher because it tells us how to do things differently. Don't internalize it. Don't let it empower that family in the head. Oh, man, I hit this barrier. I hit this blockade. So I can't do it. Just forget it. No. Perseverance pays off. Perfection and success come out of perseverance. Stay perseverant. Now, I know I said the word perfection. Now, we want to be careful, recognize what that is. What perfection is in this context that I'm talking about, it is being able to see your sense of success and embrace it, because having that sense of peace and self-compassion with it, that's the perfection I'm talking about, not this pristine, perfect outcome. Because reality is that in real life, it doesn't really work that way. It'd be great if it did, but it doesn't. Now, I want you to be aware that self-compassion takes time, and turning down the volume of that criticism, that internalized critic, that family in the head, takes time, because they have probably camped out in your brain for a long time, and they have influenced your behavior so long that you have continued to engage in self-sabotaging behavior, self-destructive behavior. But you can undo it. And it starts with that, saying, you know what? I do deserve to achieve such and such. It's going to take time. It's going to be a process, but you'll get there. You absolutely will. And be kind to yourself. It's always interesting to me how people can be kind to animals, but not other people, and that they can also be kinder to animals and other people than to themselves. That's what we're talking about here. It's about recognizing that you have that worth, that you have that value to be kind to yourself, especially when you feel those regressions and you feel yourself slide back. Happens to all of us. It doesn't mean that you're all these terrible things and all these negative descriptors. Get that stuff out of your head. That's a bunch of baloney, malarkey. Don't listen to that stuff. Look at the things that move you forward. Embrace the things that move you forward. And self-compassion is that. Self-belief, recognizing your self-worth, and going forward. Recognize that self-destruction can be a comfortable place to be. And I get it. I get it. But you're watching this video because you want a sense of success. You want to undo that self-destructive pattern. And this is how you do it. Recognize that family in the head. Recognize that the volume might be really turned up. Recognize that there is a sense of comfort with that shaming, self-shaming, that belittling of yourself because you learned it somewhere along the way to get you where you are right now. But you can do it different, and you just have to do it different all the time. Just keep at it, keep at it. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, because a lot of mental health strategies is just like ice skating. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And stay focused and never give up. Just because you fall down on the ice doesn't mean, well, I guess I'm a terrible ice skater, so forget it. I'm not going to do it anymore. You want to ice skate, because ice skating, in this instance, is reaching success, going for your goals, doing those things in a healthy way. That's what this is about. Beating that old pattern of self-destruction, removing that self-sabotaging behavior. You can do it differently. Keep that sense of self-awareness when you do say those negative things to yourself. Write them out, reframe them, frame them in another way to do it differently, and exercise self-compassion. Please do that. Leave comments about what you've done to break that cycle of self-destruction, of self-sabotage. Leave it in there. A lot of people read these comments. They find them really helpful. I love to read them as well. I think they're terrific. I try to read as many as I can, so please leave them in there. That's so important. Like, share, subscribe, hit that bell, and I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.